my notes say, introduce Enid, say things. I may have written them late at night. So a lot of you are going to see that Pinterest are really stepping up their game in the UK. Who saw ads on the tube as they came in with pins from people that you actually knew and ads on the TV, if you're watching Helmsley and Helmsley especially, or Made in Chelsea, not that I watch Made in Chelsea. But Enid has been with Pinterest since almost the beginning. She has been community manager since 2011 when she was hired as the 6th employee in the company. And I might be wrong in saying this, but I think it's because Enid developed a relationship with Ben and made herself indispensable that she got hired. So it's great news for people who like to email people and say, I think you should be doing it this way, and here's why. As Pinterest has grown to more than 100 million monthly active users, she's had a hand in fostering relationships and community across the site. And I think we can all agree that it's the community at Pinterest that made its growth so easy and so exciting for all of us who are pinners. So I would like you to give a large round of applause to Enid Hwang.
Well, hi, everyone. Everybody hear me okay? Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Kat. That was such a lovely introduction. Like, now I have to live up to it, but it's fine, no pressure. But actually, one thing that you left off of my introduction is this, the fact that I'm not a blogger. I never have been. And it's probably a little bit odd to have a non-blogger close out an event called Blogtacular. But hopefully, you know, as Kat mentioned, I've been at Pinterest for a long time. What I wanted to do today is just talk about how we all work on the internet, you know, and hopefully I'm going to share a few stories, talk about the foundational lessons that I've learned, given sort of 5.5 years at Pinterest now, and really talk about just like these foundational things that I believe are truly, truly core to building long-term success if you, quote unquote, work on the internet. And I hope through telling these stories and sharing these lessons, you'll find that maybe we're not that dissimilar, even if you're trying to launch a stationery business online, you're trying to take your blog full time, or you're trying to do something even completely different, like build the Pinterest of the future or something like that on the internet. And clearly working on the internet means flying out of browser windows towards your email. That's the 90s explanation of the internet, by the way. It's amazing. So yeah, the 3 things that I want to talk about are first, just completely getting rid of the concept of the overnight success. I think this is really, really important because for all of us who work online or are immersed in online communities, it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you can have disproportionate impact, right? You can reach beyond your family, your friends, your neighborhood, your physical boundaries, and you can create businesses that extend across borders. You can make friends with people that you've never met before. And hopefully you meet them one day at a venue like this, but the reality is you can have disproportionate impact, and that's so exciting. But on the flip side of that, it also means that you can feel disproportionate pressure, right? You're exposed to so much. It can feel like everybody's a competitor. It can feel completely overwhelming. New changes keep happening all of the time. And I think this notion of an overnight success can really cause a little bit of analysis paralysis. It can cause you to feel like you don't want to take risks. It can just feel like all too much a lot of the time. So once we get rid of that from our brains, then it's the importance of really clearly defining and focusing on what you want to create, laying out a vision for yourself, literally writing it down, referring back to it, and using that as part of a process for navigating change and adapting to change going forward, because that's the other part about working on the internet, right? It's literally shifting underneath our feet, proverbial feet, as we go. And that's tough. It's really hard. That's not true of a lot of industries, and it's especially hard if you're a small business, working sometimes by yourself or with just a few other people. So first, with the overnight success, you know, I work obviously at a technology company, but being a community manager, I work with influencers, bloggers, YouTubers every single day. And what's really struck me, like through the years, is that there really just is this myth, and we need to debunk it. I frequently hear other tech companies talking about other tech companies, other bloggers talking about other bloggers, as though their success was just fated. It was meant to happen. It's like, oh my God, they blew up overnight. Like, her followers, they just exploded. And I don't know why that's such like a popular myth to hold on to. I think maybe there's something to like the hero's story. Maybe we just have watched too many sports movies where like with just a little bit of hard work and a musical montage, like the underdog is going to win the day. Or maybe even, let's be honest with ourselves, maybe there's a little bit of a jealous impulse in there too, right? That somebody else's success was easier or came to them easier than it will for us. But the reality is, if somebody has 1 million followers, she had to have only 500,000 once, or 20,000, or 2. Everybody starts from somewhere, and rationally we know this. For some reason, it's just really hard to let go and not feel a little bit jealous, not feel a little bit like, why isn't that happening for me all the time? And it's true that pivotal moments, and sort of big breaks happen in real life, but the real story is that those are really just blips, right, in a longer timeline that's more often like quietly punctuated by just a lot of constant, unglamorous hard work that isn't often recognized. So some of you might be thinking that's very easy for me to say, working at a company that employs, several hundred people now, to talk about like, oh, don't stress about success so much. It's so easy, it's fine, just work hard. But really, Pinterest came from very humble beginnings too. This is us not that long ago. In fact, in 2011, you were looking at Pinterest's office, and by office, I mean a 2-bedroom apartment. As Kat mentioned, I was a very early employee, number 6. Eventually, 8 people would work out of this 2-bedroom apartment come office. I was the first female employee as well, so I shared the space with 6 other guys, 7 other guys. If that's ever been an experience in your life, let me tell you, this office was a very sensory experience. It would smell. Parts of it were like inexplicably sticky, like nobody could tell me why. Like, why is that? Why does it feel? Anyway, so that was my desk on my first day. I think that was where I was meant to sit. I think eventually Ben took pity on me and moved me because that was the bathroom. Again, shared it with like 7 other guys. You could hear everything. Yeah, awesome, right? Super glamorous. Overnight success. No. But in all seriousness, Pinterest really did struggle for a long time. It was never a foregone conclusion that I would be up here, that we'd be in the UK, that we have grown to the size that we have grown. And it was for a lot of like real reasons. And first of all, Pinterest was created by outsiders. There's this lovely photo here. Clearly not Silicon Valley elite that you're looking at. Half of us don't even know where the camera is, basically. But Ben, maybe you might recognize him, our CEO, the lovely fellow dead center who doesn't know where the camera is. Really, his only previous experience in tech was working at customer service at Google. Not exactly the most senior level strategic position one can hold at that organization. Our other 2 co-founders behind him, Evan, the taller one, and Paul, similar, very limited experience in tech beforehand. Paul had only worked on the venture capital side of things. Evan, he had only really done sort of user interface and product design as a side project. Previous to that, his biggest line item on his resume was being an architecture grad school dropout. And it might sound like I'm trash talking, but the rest of us are really no better. I mean, none of the early employees were pedigreed people from the tech world who brought their experiences to the table saying like, oh yeah, I've worked at Microsoft, I worked at Amazon, I worked at Google. Like, no, we either worked at really small companies in Silicon Valley before, like myself, I'd never worked at a tech company before. So we were a group of people working on something that we really believed in and something that we really loved, but Ben and Paul would joke about this all the time. They're like, sometimes investors wouldn't even tell us no. They just wouldn't take the meeting. Tech press didn't care what we were doing, nothing. It was just crickets. It was really sad. The other thing was, even if we did get the meeting, no one understood what Pinterest was. And if you can think back to 2009, 2010, when Pinterest was just trying to get going, the most popular services of the day were this. They were text-based, they were chronological feeds, single column, and they were all about status updates. They were all about connecting to people in real life, social networking, social networking. That was all you could ever hear about in 2009, 2010, when it was really breaking into the mainstream. People were finally starting to wake up to the fact that maybe Facebook just isn't just for college students, you know? And here we were, and we were this, and this, and this. And it wasn't just like the design of Pinterest. Yeah. It wasn't just the design of Pinterest that was different to people and really nonsensical to them back then. It was the entire like core value we were trying to put forward. Like the nuts and bolts of the tool that we were trying to build didn't make sense to people. It was completely counter to the popular services of the day. You know, Pinterest was deliberately personal and introspective. It's meant to be a safe space for you to kind of indulge in your own interests. It's me time. That's what we would hear from early users all the time. It's for you to, you know, dive into and explore visual interests, do something new, you know, explore your hobbies. It's not about even following your friends because they might not have the same interests as you. And hearing those things in pitch meetings and investor meetings, they were like, what? Like, how can you not be about social networking? Everybody's doing social networking. So we had a lot of opportunities to add more social features to Pinterest, you know, to change what we were about, to kind of give up the ghost on this really introspective and personal tool. But I'm really, really proud of the fact that we didn't. But, you know, so you have this bunch of weirdos trying to create something nobody understands in Silicon Valley, you know, no users, no tech press, like barely any investors. So how do we get here? You know, how do I get up here? And really, Pinterest grew because of bloggers. You know, Pinterest was, yes, by all means, you should clap for yourselves. It's a really big deal. It was a really big deal to us. You know, here we were going around meeting to meeting, trying to get like the typical cool, techie, early adopter to use Pinterest, and it was, you know, radio silence. And again, instead of figuring out how we could pivot and how we could change to attract that type of person, that type of early adopter, instead, and much of the credit goes to Ben, he was very deliberate about the fact that, like, you know what, I love collecting. I love this visual bookmarking tool. I believe it's going to be compelling to someone. We just have to figure out like who that someone is and find that person, go to where they are. And so he racked his brain and was like, you know, what are the people who are out there who are really visually oriented, you know, who love collecting and curating stuff online, who might really need a visual bookmarking tool, you know, to help them out? And the answer was clearly bloggers. So he started going to events very much like this one in the US. Altitude Design Summit, if you've heard of that. A big one happens in Salt Lake City, but they also have ones in other cities now. And he would go with like business cards with invite codes printed on them, and he would just like beg people to try and use Pinterest, to give it a shot, see if they loved it. And we were very, very fortunate that he completely hit it off with Victoria Smith, who's screen capped there. She's AKA SF Girl by the Bay, if you've heard of her, like OG mother hen home decor blogger. And it worked, it clicked. We didn't have to hard pitch her on Pinterest. She loved it. It was immediately useful to her. It changed the way that she was able to do her day-to-day, full-time blogging job. She could save visual inspiration so much more easily. She could go back to the source on a whim, things like that. She could get rid of like that desktop folder on her computer, like filled with right-click saved images that didn't actually go anywhere, and maybe you don't use them, and the links that you would email yourself and stuff like that. So really, out of the kindness of her heart, and because she believed that, yes, I love Pinterest too, just like Ben loves Pinterest. I know other people who love Pinterest. She put together this blogger campaign for us called Pin It Forward. She got together 300 blogger friends of hers, and every day for 30 days, 10 people wrote about Pinterest. Again, out of the goodness of their hearts, because they just found it so valuable and they wanted to share it with their readers and their audience. Regular people who wanted to save home decor projects, who wanted to save visual inspiration, who wanted to save tutorials. That was their audience. And what we ultimately found was that was Pinterest's audience too. So a lot of our early community came from this effort. Joy Cho was part of the Pin It Forward campaign. maybe even some of you in this room, I don't know, it did end up going beyond the US at that point. But even then, it wasn't overnight, right? It still took us a while to build momentum, but that was absolutely the spark that lit the flame, was finally finding the people who really did resonate with Pinterest, who immediately got it, who felt the value in their day-to-day, offline, real lives without us having to send them pages and pages of explanations on why this might be useful to them, which was really incredible. So I'm deeply, profoundly proud that we didn't give up on that mission, and we formalized it years ago, and to this day it's exactly the same. We're out to do the same thing that we were out to do 5 years ago, but just better and hopefully entirely around the world, which is to help people discover and do the things that they love. Whether you're a hobbyist and what you're into is something as niche as cosplay, or something really everyday, like just wanting to look your best when you go to work or go to a party, or learning a new skill. Like my favorite, Kelly is determined to learn how to bake. She's 80 pins in, I hope she's doing well. But yeah, we stuck with it no matter how unpopular it seemed, which is really, really important and leads us to sort of number 2 and what I wanted to talk to you guys about, which is really taking the time to define for yourself and write it out in words, your vision for your business, for your blog, and what you want to achieve. What's the mark that you want to leave in roughly 5 years? Put that as a timeline for yourself and crystallize it. Have a sense for what you want your brand to stand for and what your business to be accomplishing at that time. And use it to focus everything that you do. To kind of illustrate our progress, this is a photo from us a little bit later in 2011, moving into our first real office, assembling our IKEA furniture. This is very fun. We're like, yay, we don't work in an apartment anymore. This is awesome. Yeah, but if that's so important, why don't more people do it? Why don't more people literally just write out their goals, draw a line in the sand and say, this is what I want to accomplish, this is what I'm about. And I think it's because it's just out of hand, more vulnerable, right? I mean, if you're committing to something that you're truly passionate about, you have skin in the game. It's very intimate. It's actually about you. It's your goals. It's what your brand is about. And that's kind of hard to put out there and to write down, maybe even for yourself to read back to you. It's also just unprecedented, right? I mean, laying out what you want your business to be about, especially if it's a small business that's almost entirely dependent on you and your productivity and your creativity, there isn't a roadmap to follow. There was no Pinterest before Pinterest. It's hard to make business decisions when you don't have just a proven path forward in front of you. And when you're working on your own private business, it's very true for you guys too, right? There are so many different options, so many pathways to follow. How do you choose the right one? It can feel a little bit overwhelming. And then, of course, there are just a lot of doubters. If you're doing something that's really unique, that's different from other things that are out there, if you're producing products that are different from what's out there, you will encounter a lot of haters. The good news, though, is that there is actually precedent for haters being wrong. So this is a statement from sort of a contemporary of Alexander Graham Bell's. And he wrote, his talking telegraph, it's cool as a toy, I guess, but its commercial value will be limited. Obviously, he was proved very wrong. And I'm just realizing now I missed a total opportunity to write Elijah Gray, inventor of throwing shade, 1876. Next time, I'll change it. This one, hometown hero, apparently astronomer royal, sounds like a pretty cool gig. He was space travel is utter bilge. Just to the point. Unfortunately, I think he said this only a year before Sputnik ended up orbiting the Earth. And then my personal favorite, Clifford Stoll, who's actually a very well-regarded investigator and writer about hacker culture, wrote this. Visionaries see a future of telecommuting workers, interactive libraries, and multimedia classrooms. They speak of electronic town meetings and virtual communities. Baloney. Do our computer pundits lack all common sense? So harsh. 1995, and here we all, literally hundreds of us in this room together today, living out and enacting all of these things that he disavowed and claimed were impossible. It's kind of crazy, right? So there are lots of haters. There are going to be haters, there are going to be doubters, and you will also often doubt yourself when you commit to something that you're truly passionate about and maybe hasn't been done exactly the way that you're doing it before. It's scary. I totally get it. What I can also tell you is that the risk is equal to the reward, for sure. This is a photo of the first Pinterest meetup, actually, that I organized in Los Angeles. So very early days of Pinterest. This is after Pin It Forward had happened. Not only had bloggers started using Pinterest, but their readers had started using Pinterest. We were starting to see a little bit of momentum. We didn't get a lot of tech press yet. No cool techie people were using Pinterest yet, but it didn't matter. I mean, look at this space. Ben and I actually attended this event together, and it was so humbling and amazing because although we had worked so long almost in the dark, once we found the people that really loved what we were doing, that's all that mattered, right? And that doesn't just matter from a business perspective of you can start making money. You've actually found your customer who wants the thing that you're selling. You've actually found your reader who's engaging with your content. It matters because you are creating real impact with people who deeply care about what you're doing. Not just people who are fly by night, they see a couple posts and they're like, oh, see ya. These are the people who love what you're doing. This is your community. And it's obviously very profound. So really, my advice is have a vision or mission in mind for yourself. Truly write it down. You don't have to post it publicly, but use it for yourself. Constantly refer back to it. I mean, that is true north on your compass, and that is the first sort of filter that you should use to evaluate business decisions for yourself on whether something is right or wrong. Does it put you on that path to achieving what you wrote down today, last year when you're using it and looking back on it, 2 years from now when you're using it and looking back on it? We do this at Pinterest all the time. Obviously, it's a little bit different because we are literally a company of now hundreds of people. We use our vision and our mission to align teams, right? To align people who have joined the company 6 months ago to people like me who have been at the company for 5 years or more. But it's so clarifying because you can literally say to another person that you're working with, I don't think that lines up to what we're all doing here. It's very clarifying to just have that instant, that's a great idea, but is it the top priority against other things that we could be doing that put us down this path of helping more people discover and save the things that they love, right? So that's Ben sharing a story about a pinner who likes cookies, apparently, and baking to the rest of the company. And this is the first step. Once you have that mission written down, that vision for yourself and for your business, this is the first thing that you need to have in your arsenal when you come up with your process for dealing with change, because you need to have a process for dealing with change. This is probably the hardest aspect of working in a primarily online space or using digital in a lot of ways to market yourself, market your products, is that it'll never stop. It'll literally never stop. I mean, new platforms will come up all the time, new tools, new strategies, new policies on Pinterest. We're guilty of doing this to you guys too. And I wish I could reassure you more and say that there's going to be a point in time where it just plateaus, but it won't. So you need to get comfortable with this. This, if you don't know what it is, it's actually the first banner ad that was ever online from 1994. It is so terrible, right? It's the worst thing you've ever seen. Why would anybody ever click on that? But it's just one dinosaur, right, in sort of a long line of fossils that is the history of the internet. And it's just going to keep happening. It's going to keep evolving. Banner ads are dying, as I'm sure a lot of you guys have noticed or have heard, and it's being replaced by this phoenix of the sponsored post. Someday, maybe the sponsored post will give way to something else. That's going to be hard. So for long-term success, you need to be really well equipped to deal with change. And after all, being an early adopter has its benefits, right? Adopting new things can be really good for you. This is obviously old Pinterest before our logo was even red. And we literally had a section on the site. It was a leaderboard called Tastemakers. And it was the top-ranked people based on repins and clicks of their content and the stuff that they were curating. And through that and through recommending other people who are doing really well on the platform, like Joy Cho grew with us to 12 million followers. People who were less well known but who were really great at using Pinterest, just really figured the platform out early, grew with us as well, even though they weren't as well known beforehand. So Justina Blakeney, now a big sort of home decor blogger. She grew to 1 million followers on Pinterest, has been able to parlay that into book deals and a furniture line and a rug line. And that was all kind of a direct outcome of being early on the platform and just like applying themselves to figuring it out and doing really well. But yeah, I would definitely recommend to you guys, and I know this can kind of be a bummer to a lot of creatives, but if you want to have a successful creative business, you can't forget the business side of it, right? So you have to get comfortable evaluating new ideas through analytics. It doesn't mean you have to be like a total math whiz, but just knowing that every time you take on sort of a new strategy or a new platform like Snapchat or Pinterest back when we first got started, have some goals for yourself on what you want success to look like for yourself on that platform a few months down the road, and then just be really deliberate and hold yourself accountable for being self-reflective. When you start signing up for a new strategy or you try something new in your content calendar, for example, set up time with yourself in 3 months, in 6 months, to just literally check in and see how that's been performing for you, both numerically and analytically, but also just carving out the time for yourself to self-reflect and see how doing that new strategy or doing that new effort has made you feel over the past few months. Is it giving you energy? Is it really turning you on to like produce videos? Is it like energizing you? Or is it taking away energy? So you kind of can evaluate those things against each other, right? Because even if something might be performing really, really well for you, if you find that it takes a lot of your time away, a lot of your energy, and you're not super excited about doing it, it's okay to give yourself the reason to say, that's not right for me. I tried it for 6 months. I'm comparing sort of the objective gains that I get for my business against my energy levels, and I'm like, it's not worth it. They have canceled each other out, or one is greater than the other. Versus if you find something that is performing really, really well, and you're emotionally just like super psyched to do it, but you're not getting the business returns from yourself, I think you also have to be honest and say, like, is this really, really worth my time when I could be doing other things that are more important to my business? How can you sort of equalize that? Because I think in this room, we do all have a very special privilege on working on something that's deeply personal and on something that you love. So why would you give up that privilege? You should continue building your business, but try to keep it on track so that you're still excited to work on that every single day when you wake up. Which also leads to be really wary of sort of like chasing shiny new things sometimes. Again, try the new thing, but just set up guardrails for yourself. First, is that shiny new thing, again, putting you down that path towards your long-term vision and towards your long-term goals? Yes or no? Because if it's no, maybe that is just the shiny thing on the side of the road that you can bypass and keep going, right? Or is it something that's just like not right for your brand? Be really critical of those ideas, and again, just like leverage your network. I mean, we all know somebody that even if they're not doing the exact same thing that we are, probably has some expertise or some experience that you can bounce ideas off of each other. Maybe they can even explain like, oh yeah, like I tried video. It wasn't right for me because it takes a long time for me to edit stuff and it was like distracting me for other things. That could be a good learning for you to be cognizant of. So you're like, oh, well, I want to try video. But I should just, see how long it takes me to edit stuff. Is it really worth my time? Can be really, really helpful. Because this is the ultimate truth, right? Especially as bloggers or small business owners, you and your energy and your time is your absolutely most precious resource. And this was definitely true of Pinterest in the early days too. We were a tiny group of people, and because we weren't getting a lot of momentum in the tech world, although we started to grow amongst regular people, pinners and bloggers that were loving the service, it was actually hard for us to hire for a while. It was hard for us to hire software engineers because they were like, why would I work for this thing that I've never heard of when I have like this amazing offer from Facebook or something like that? So with a really small team, we had to be like laser focused about what we spent our time on. Originally when I started working at Pinterest, of course, I was doing literally everything. I was managing the social channels. I was doing customer support. I was writing blog posts, which I really love doing. But as we grew so quickly, I was like, you know what, customer support is like my #1 priority. I have to make more time for that. Even as much as like I love doing the blog and it's fun, you gotta kind of triage, right? And the ultimate irony is also that when we started growing and getting momentum, suddenly there were a lot of Pinterest copycats, which was funny after being like in accidental stealth mode for so long. Yeah, lots of other companies started copying our interface and our design. You know, a large traditional search engine has like borrowed some of our features, and that can be like a little bit demoralizing, and it can also make you feel a lot of pressure and feel hyper competitive. But the reality is there's not a whole lot you can do about it, right? Like, competition is natural and it's just going to happen. While it can sometimes be a bummer, the best thing that you can do for yourself and for your business is just to like stay positive, refer back to what you're really in it for, that vision for yourself or for your business, and just do it better than everybody else. Like, redouble your efforts on what you can control and don't worry so much about what other people are up to. And yeah, I mean, we've learned this many times at Pinterest. Shifting sort of into today mode, sort of expanding internationally at Pinterest is our most important and biggest challenge for us as an entire company since we shifted from desktop to primarily mobile back in 2012. You know, we're just getting started with this, but it's meant having to completely change our mindset as a company about thinking international first as opposed to US first. So it's meant questioning a lot of things that could be like holy relics that we just accept as things that we continue to do because we've always done them. But stuff changes for Pinterest too. Stuff changes online all the time. We recently changed all of pin it buttons to be save buttons because we knew that international comprehension was a really big deal, a really important hurdle for us to kind of leap over. And the reality is if we want to help people save and discover things that they love, and we talk about becoming the save button in the internet, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot comprehension-wise if everywhere instead our button says pin it. And maybe that's a little bit harder for people in Japan to understand or Germany to understand. Instead, if we just call it save, which is such a more universally understood concept, and instead of relying on a metaphor that was really central to our brand and felt really precious, but we had to give it up, right? And that was definitely many meetings where, you know, comparing the analytical against the emotional. We're letting go of something that feels a little bit precious to our brand, but man, like all the research, like all the objective numbers show that this is absolutely worth it to do. So for those of us in the room who are a little bit bummed, we just kind of have to like swallow that jagged pill for a sec and know that we'll all move on and Pinterest will be better globally because of it. Another one, of course, is just helping international users connect much more easily and discover much more easily content that's like really relevant to them, no matter where they live. So this is actually a new feature that's only in countries outside of the US right now, obviously UK being one of them, called Featured Collections. And this is basically Tastemakers V.10 of that old leaderboard. It's hand-curated, and it shows off topics and people and popular searches that are really trending in the country at that moment. So this is when we launched with Jamie Oliver, but it's our space to recreate that feeling, that instant feeling between a brand new person who's signed up in Pinterest UK and connecting them to people and tastemakers that they recognize, you know, content that they can immediately engage with because Americans are barbarians and don't use the metric system and use horrible words like arugula and stuff like that. Like, we just have to do a better job surfacing local content. And this, I know, arugula. It's like arugula versus roquette. Why did we choose arugula? It's terrible. Anyway, so it's a very specific local challenge, and this is the way that we're choosing to solve it, is to go back to our roots a little bit, be hand selective about the people that we showcase here. So if you haven't like tossed me your business card yet, like please do, because we're looking for amazing like local UK content creators and curators to feature in this space. It rotates every single week, and our marketing team is like constantly creating new themes to feature, whether it's like summer holiday ideas to Amsterdam or beauty tips and things like that all come from local sources, local tastemakers. So basically, in closing, the internet, it's a crazy place, and it's not all surfing on keyboards away from a nuclear blast or whatever that is. We're having so much fun. We're children.
Explorer over there?
No, it can't be because it's from the 90s, because I pulled all of this imagery from the 90s, because that's what I felt like doing.
I think the creators of Dora also did.
But yeah, this is the 90s explanation of the internet yet again. Totally nailed it. But yeah, the internet it's a hard place to make your living on and to work on day to day and to learn how to market yourself. So often you feel like you have to reinvent what you're doing. It's very easy to sort of lose your mind and lose yourself, I think, while doing it, especially over a prolonged period of time. So hopefully, what I want you all to do, what I want you all to take away after today, especially being exposed to so many new ideas and new tips and new tricks, is to first just cut through the noise a little bit, right? Remember that even if you employ video tomorrow, it doesn't mean it's going to take off, but that's okay. The overnight success is a lie. And remember that even though it's amazing to be immersed in so many ideas and amongst a super, super large community online, remember that you don't have to chase after every single little new thing that you see everybody else doing, and that'll hopefully help eliminate some of the anxiety of doing this long term. And second is being really clear with yourself on what you want to accomplish, writing that down, having a vision for yourself, maybe even sharing it with other people if you want to, but certainly using it for yourself to help clarify your decisions and using it as that sort of guidepost. And then, of course, just remembering to be self-reflective. Really take the time to monitor how you are feeling as you are working on your business and how new tools and new strategies are actually performing for you. You have to set aside the time to do that, though, because I know that you are your own business manager, and you are your own photographer, and you are your own stylist, and your writer, and all of these things. You all work probably 5 full-time jobs, somehow rolled into one, and somehow still people are like, oh, you're a blogger. So that can be disheartening. So you have to set aside time to do that, otherwise you're just kind of making decisions blindly, which can be a really bad precedent to set for yourself. And I can honestly say that, those are really foundational things, but those are foundational things that I think have really, really helped Pinterest long term. Like I was saying, there are a lot of opportunities to sort of give up on what we were building. And for 6 years now, and obviously from humble beginnings, I could say that we've stuck with it, and it's been really meaningful. Once we found our audience that believed in our mission just as much as we did, saw as much value in the tool that we were trying to create as we did, we were able to grow from there. And they're an audience that's deeply precious to us. A lot of you are in this room, which is incredible. But now we're up to 75 billion pins, 1 billion boards, 100 million monthly active users. It took a long time to get here, but it's been really exciting. And if you had told me sort of 5 years ago when I started working at Pinterest, oh, you'll be able to go to Tokyo and London, Berlin, I would have laughed in your face probably. Actually, I probably would have said utter bilge. But it's really amazing. I've learned to open my mind a lot while working at Pinterest. Things that don't seem possible suddenly have become possible just by really being honest with ourselves, having hard conversations amongst fellow teammates and saying that is not core to our mission. This is. And kind of duking it out in an arena of ideas and trying to pick the ones that are best for the business overall and also feel good from a brand standpoint that makes sense for what Pinterest is, a warm and safe place. We can't toss that all off of the table because that's core to who we are. So I've been really excited about where we've been able to grow, obviously. We have a lot more growth to do in the UK, and I hope you guys will do it with us on places like featured collections and also just sharing the amazing content that you guys put out. As we know, Pinterest is a magical place where people come to discover stuff to try and to do, and there wouldn't be any of that magic if it weren't for the people in this room and people like you in other rooms sitting around the world, right? Like, if you're Kelly and you're determined to learn how to bake, you need a food blogger out there who's creating, easy cookie recipe that you can make in 30 minutes, 5 ingredients or less. That's hard for just an everyday person to come up with on their own. Or if you're getting dressed for a big event, you want some beauty tip inspiration. I can't do eyeliner without watching a YouTube video and squinting as I watch it at the same time. That person saves my life for a holiday party, or it really feels like it. So again, thank you all so much. A couple of you were essentially working the event on behalf of Pinterest, Hege, who had to take off early, and Sarah. So I definitely want to say a special thank you for those two, but really for everyone else who makes Pinterest what it is, who fills it with the ideas that are necessary to make it that safe and magical place for people. Thank you, and we really hope you'll continue to help us grow using featured collections and things like that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Enid. It's a real honour to have her here, and I think we can all agree that was incredible insight into the overnight success of Pinterest.
Exactly. Thank you.